Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital. Now before I begin, be sure to click subscribe and turn on the notification bell. On the morning of September 1st, 1859, Richard Carrington, a British astronomer, ascended into the private observatory on his country estate outside of London. The clear blue sky above the open dome of his observatory offered a perfect view of the brilliant late summer sun, Carrington's preferred object of interest. Looking intently into his telescope fitted with protective filters designed specifically for his work, Carrington stared straight into the sun and began to sketch a large dark sunspot. As he glanced back into the telescope to refine his sketch, he witnessed two eruptions of intense bright light that exploded out of the sun and vanished within minutes. Curious, Carrington noted the eruptions and continued on with his observations, unaware that hours later the world would be turned upside down. But more on that later. For first, we are going to cover EMP attacks, one of those obscure threats that may float to the surface when you start reading about off-grid solar systems. But even if you have no interest in off-grid living, an EMP attack could have a huge impact on you. So here's what you should know. Number 1, an EMP attack is a burst of electromagnetic energy. This can occur either naturally or it can be generated using nuclear weapons. Number 2, there are two main scenarios in which a massive EMP attack could occur. The first is naturally occurring, usually in the event of a coronal mass ejection. In this scenario, a massive solar flare releases electromagnetic radiation into the solar wind that hits the Earth's electromagnetic field. When the electromagnetic radiation or plasma slams into the Earth's field, it disrupts the field, releasing waves of power into the atmosphere. The second large-scale EMP attack scenario would be in the event of a nuclear detonation at a high enough altitude. The nuclear explosion's gamma rays excite electrons in the air, resulting in rapidly varying electric and magnetic fields that may couple with electrical and electronic devices or systems to produce damaging current and high-voltage surges. Essentially, a nuclear attack at a high enough altitude would mimic a solar flare hitting the Earth's electromagnetic field. The threat of a man-made EMP attack is not completely idle. Both China and Russia have the capability of delivering one, and there currently seems to be an arms race between the US, China, and Russia to develop non-nuclear EMP bombs that can, in a non-lethal manner, wipe out a city's power grid. Number 3. An EMP's huge burst of energy can cause power surges to any electronic equipment in range. This is why we worry about EMPs, not so much because they are dangerous to human health, but because a large enough event, as would occur with a massive solar storm or nuclear EMP attack, could cause massive damage, even complete collapse of the power grid. Number 4. The way an EMP attack would affect technology depends on the pulse's frequency and the size of the equipment's wires. The larger wires in the above-ground power grid can be affected by even very low-frequency pulses. This is why many people are concerned that our power grid would be highly susceptible to an EMP attack. The power lines will then carry power surges to connected equipment, potentially frying most sensitive electronics. A large enough EMP attack may also generate pulses that penetrate the ground and affect buried power lines as well, depending again on the size of the pulse and the type of soil above the wires in question. But even the smaller wires in electronics that are not connected to the power grid can be damaged in a high-frequency pulse. So those who are living completely off-grid will likely be affected as well in the event of a massive EMP attack. Number 5. Fortunately, because we have not yet experienced a massive EMP attack in the electronic age, we don't actually have a solid idea of how the power grid would be affected. But there were a few events that foreshadow what may happen. In 1989, there was a small geomagnetic storm that knocked out Quebec's power grid for 9 hours. The US also detonated an experimental high-altitude nuclear weapon above the Pacific Ocean, causing effects in Hawaii about 900 miles away. But what we do know is that a major space weather event is likely inevitable and will probably have planet-wide effects. Although before you get too worried, keep in mind that inevitable doesn't necessarily mean inevitable during our lifetime. Number 6, if you are now worried about an EMP attack, know that there are a few things you can do to prepare for one. Most of the preparation is very similar to preparing for any other kind of power outage. You'd want to have a stock of canned food and bottled water, battery-powered flashlights and lots of batteries, a battery-powered radio, plenty of warm blankets, under the assumption that your heating system will be knocked out as well, hand-powered tools, especially can openers for all your canned food, and other basic survival tools, such as a first aid kit. You'll also want to have spare fuel and replacement items for your car. And finally, number 7. If you are living off-grid and if you have your own off-grid solar system, you are not completely safe either, although you are in better shape than someone who is connected to the grid. Disconnected solar panels should not be affected by an EMP attack, but the connecting circuitry and attendant electronics will be. Furthermore, if your solar panels are connected to each other, they may be damaged during the attack. The best thing you can do to protect your system is very similar to what you would do in preparation for a lightning storm. If you have enough advanced warning, unplug your panels and turn off all electronic components. And if you wanted extra security, you would put all sensitive electronic components, such as your inverter or charge controller, in a Faraday cage. But let's return to Carrington. The powerful jets of electrified gas he witnessed sped across space at lightning speed, slamming into the Earth's magnetic field within hours. And strange things started to happen across the planet. Brilliant auroras danced overhead. Night turned to day, and the birds began chirping in the trees. In South Carolina, the sky turned a brilliant red, reflecting down into the sea, turning it the color of blood, the shells on the beach resembling coals of fire. The nation's telegraph lines went haywire. Powerful surges melted the platinum contacts, and streams of fires poured forth from the circuits. One telegraph operator witnessed an arc of fire jump from a colleague's head to the telegraph equipment after the unfortunate man touched a ground wire. However, mankind's ability to harness the power of electricity was limited at the time, and the now famous Carrington event produced more wonder than damage. But imagine if such a storm hit Earth today. Considering the possible outcomes is enough to turn one into a prepper. Luckily for us, though, it is unlikely we will be hit by such a massive storm in our lifetime. But it may not be a bad idea to consider installing a resilient off-grid solar system for backup just in case. Now, do you have any thoughts or stories on EMPs? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down listings at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.